quick show of hands. How many of you are selling into colleges and universities? Okay, so that's a good proportion. Those of you that aren't selling direct or aren't involved in that chain, who are you working with? Who are your end audience that will read your publications? Research communities, is it? Societies? Okay, right. What I want to do very quickly is to show how our work, Jisc TechDis, is an organisation centrally funded in the UK, and our remit is to give advice and guidance on using technology for inclusion, to make accessible, to make teaching and learning and research accessible to as wide a range of people as possible. And I want to look at how accessible publications can, what I call, unleash the genie. What is the e-text genie? The magical things that well-structured, accessible text can do include the things on the screen here. Magnifying text, that benefits a whole range of potential readers, learners, researchers, students, staff. And of course, magnifying text is only one part of it, because if you magnify the text and then you have to then go 3/4 of a metre to the right off the screen to get to the end of the sentence, that's no good. So magnifying with reflow is critical. Being able to recolour the text makes a big difference to a lot of learners, a lot of users and readers. Being able to format shift, being able to listen to it in audio if you wish to, is important. Being able to navigate easily. That was a big factor for James when he did that second part of the demonstration, how quickly he could navigate through. It's equally a big factor for dyslexic readers, for people who are perhaps approaching English as not a mother script. It's a script that is their second or third language. To be able to very quickly see and navigate their way through meaning of text is really important. And to interoperate with the range of assistive technology tools, or indeed with a range of non-assistive technology tools that just happen to be Kindles, iPads, phones, etc. So the customer realities in terms of disabled users being able to access content, that genie of text in electronic format can really help. How many people are we talking about? Well, in higher education, based on the HESA stats for 2010, those are the latest ones I've looked at, and looking at the number of visually impaired people, the number of dyslexic people, etc., in higher education in the UK, there's about 600 to 700 print impaired learners in every university in the UK. That's a significant amount of people. Each of them will be accessing maybe 15 texts a year as part of their course. That's a lot of texts that need to be accessible. In FE, the numbers are greater because there tends to be drop-off points between each stage of education. People with disabilities drop off quicker than anybody else. Literacy Trust estimates 20% of people have a 2-year reduction minimum in their expected reading age. I've got some quite detailed figures for Scotland, where 10% of the exam candidates in Scotland in 2012 had access arrangements with 18,800 requests for a reader. Just look at the Scottish figures for a minute, because this is the end point of a lot of, you won't necessarily be selling books to the Scottish secondary market, but these people are moving into FE and then moving into HE. And look at the figures here. Between 2008, the critical one to look at is the green line. The number of people that were requesting exams in ICT format, in electronic format, has gone up 100% in the last 4 years. And the trend is very much coming down from human intermediaries, people to read, people to scribe for you, to going up to the electronic ways. So the genie is being recognised in the assessment and the e-assessment area, and it is being recognised in publishing and the wider aggregation, distribution, supply chain, etc. So, the second key point is that there are more disabled people aspiring to do more, and that's a really significant point for publishers wanting to support those communities. A third important point is entitlement, because unlike you, who do not have this particular legislation apply to you in this particular way, every university, every learning provider, whether an FE college, a university, and indeed, I suspect some of your societies, have to abide with the Equality Act 2010. Now, I'm not going to go through all of it, but there's some really significant sections in there that talk about a requirement where a provision, a criteria, or a practice puts a disabled person at substantial disadvantage, then you have to take such steps as is reasonable to avoid that disadvantage. And a very simple example of that is somebody needs to access an ebook platform, access electronic texts, and they can't. You have to, as a learning provider, you have to make a reasonable step to do that. Or if somebody needs to use an auxiliary aid, so somebody perhaps like James wanting to use a screen reader, again, you have to either provide that aid or make sure that the aid that they have will work with your systems. What is meant by reasonable under those circumstances? And this is the killer for learning providers. In that last section there, where the circumstances concern information, which of course is what education is about, a reasonable expectation is that information is provided in an accessible format. Okay, you are safe in the sense that if you're a publisher and you don't quite get accessibility right, nobody takes you to court. If you're an aggregator, a platform provider, and you don't quite get it right, nobody takes you to court. If the communities I represent purchase your systems and they're not right, people can take us to court and can sue us for lots of money. So learning providers, we in our community are legally required. You can make an enormous difference to that with an accessible system. And one of our key things, one of our key reasonable adjustments is either to look at the platform and choose a platform that is more accessible, or to contact the publisher and say, look, we're using this platform or we're using this system, we can't get an accessible text from it, can you send us an unprotected PDF? Last year we asked 49 higher education providers which sort of features were present on their ebook platform, because clearly if the adjustments can be made on the mainstream platform, that saves us a lot of money. It also saves you having to deal with our kind of inquiries. And this is the critical point in this graph is we asked about keyboard access, font size, reflow, colour, text-to-speech compatibility, and so on. And most of the library staff we asked didn't know. Why didn't they know? It's because there was no accessibility statement on the platforms they were using them, telling them what to expect. So what we did find was that e-texts are currently very varied in their accessibility. That might be the native format behind the system, or it might be the system through which it's being delivered. But very often there's some great functionality in there. It won't necessarily be wholly accessible, but it'll be doing some good things. It will change colours, it will change text sizes, maybe even text styles, but nobody's telling the end users about that. So where is the genie? And the last point, before I give you 3 priorities to work out, the last point is that this is actually about money. The University of Dundee has an alternative formats service, and the guy that runs it used to be an auditor, so he's done some quite detailed costs. Last year they spent £50,000 on 7 students in making sure that the texts they needed were available in accessible format. If they can save that money, they will. If purchasing a different platform or working with a different publisher means they save £50,000 a year, then they will do that. Okay, make no mistake. So any accessibility shortcomings in the delivery of your products, even if your products are brilliant but they're being delivered through an inaccessible platform, is going to cost real customers real money. And the implications of this are that, again, in the survey we did 49 higher education institutions. With half of them that we surveyed, accessibility was specified as a procurement criterion when they were purchasing or licensing new platforms. And in terms of the level of interest out there, we've recently, I think it was yesterday, the consultation on the technical draft of the IPO copyright exemptions for disabled people. The deadline for commenting was yesterday. We worked with our communities to get feedback on what sort of things they were comfortable in the wording, which bits of the wording they felt didn't quite answer what they were trying to achieve and what we felt the law was trying to achieve. We had 210 responses to that survey, 93 responses from higher education. Bear in mind that there's only 115 universities in the UK. 93 responses shows a huge level of interest. So I'm going to stop with 3 priorities. I think there are some short-term priorities you can do. And that first one is provide positive accessibility information. Have a look at your systems, have a look at your raw texts, and tell people what the maximum font size is that you can get on your system. Does the text read thin and enlarged? Tell them. If they can change colours and contrast, tell them. Just tell them what you can be proud to celebrate. In the medium term, and that's, I call that short term. What I mean by short term is a week. Actually, we could even do it in like overnight, because I could sit with you in a coffee break, we could answer those questions, and we could write it in a 2-paragraph statement, and we could put it on your website. So that's very short term. In the medium term, you might need to spend more time on some internal research. Can you get around either your system, or maybe you're a publisher and you're outsourcing the delivery through aggregators? Well, begin to ask the aggregators, can this happen on your systems? Are the keyboard-only equivalents for mouse actions? Where's the list of that? And so on. Signpost potential difficulties, suggest workarounds. You don't have to have all the answers. There are some great tools out there. We can advise, RNIB can advise on how there are free tools that will change colours, give colour overlay washes on a screen. Maybe it's not built into your system, but if you tell people how to do it, that makes a difference. And in the long term, ensure policies are in place to embed accessibility in the planning of projects, so it's not something you tack on at the end, but you've got their plan from the beginning. Test it with disabled users. Standards are great, but generally utterly incomprehensible to ordinary users. They just need to know, can I do this, can I do that? We've got a list of things that we can help you with. Promote accessibility in your marketing. It's going to be very, very important over the next couple of years. Students are paying £9,000 a year, in most cases, extra top-up fees. They don't want to find that it takes them 6 weeks to get the text that everybody else has finished with after 3. And protect accessibility in the supply chain, because you may do fantastic work and somebody else completely screws up your efforts because the platform it's delivered through simply isn't accessible. Thank you.